And it's, of course, my pleasure to be here as well and to be on a stage for a very long time. So I do have to let this sink in and take a deep breath. And haven't been speaking in front of real people for a long time. And of course, I haven't heard Peter's introduction for such a long time. And I was really looking forward to that. And yeah, like Peter said, what we'll do a little bit today is bring the psychological perspective into all of this. I know all of you are research experts and you all have psychologists in your teams. So we do feel very welcome here. And what I also wanted to say, normally Karina would be standing here instead of me, but she's on her well-deserved vacation. So I have with me my colleagues from the UX team of iSquare. We're researchers, and we do this since a long time, and we're based in Berlin, so that's why we also always like our to be a partner here at the car HMI very much. And what we help our clients with is actually to do research. And of course, it's a daily part of many of your business, and we know how difficult it is to do research in the qualitative and the quantitative way, and also in the automotive industry especially. So that's why we're here and why we like to help with our expertise and also with our technology. And so I'm very happy also to speak after Mr. Niehaus and after Mr. Bauer and Mike, who just spoke before, since the research is so important when we talk about HMI, when we talk about implicit. It's basically also all of the methods that we like to bring into the research process, since, of course, we do not want to disturb and we do not want to bring too many technologies into the research. And that's kind of our challenge. And also at the end, I have a small case study with us where we try to make research even easier by sending equipment to people who are at home. So we do not even have to be close to the driver or to the user, depending on how we want to call them today. So we'll come to that in a second. At iSquare, the experience being very close to the driver and the customer is what we like to do, and we also like to see the experience from their own eye. That's why we also like to integrate eye tracking if we can, and it's also a little bit of our core technologies. We do not build technology. We're all consultants and psychologists, but we do, of course, try to implement the best research that is portable and scalable, so we can do the best research possible, both in the lab, in the simulator, or even in the real field, which is then the biggest challenge. Yeah, we at iSquare, like I said before, we have been doing this for a long time, over 20 years. The company was founded here in Germany. Of course, our colleagues sit around the world, and our labs here in Kreuzberg also, like, sometimes we do automotive research there, but then of course it's about HMIs and not about the whole system. And like to do this in Asia, of course, as well as in the States. And I'll just skip to the part where we'll kind of take a step back and think about what does it really mean to do user research from a psychological perspective, of course, and also taking the perspective of the driver, like Mr. Niels already said before. When we actually try to understand people who are in the car, they have a primary task, which is driving, obviously, and they have all kinds of secondary tasks, which we just heard from Mike about, that there is so many things that divert the attention from the most important thing, of course, the driving and the safety. And when we think about drivers and customers from a UX perspective, of course, we like to differentiate between pragmatic and hedonic, which is easy to measure. The hedonic part is the difficult one. The pragmatic part is the easy one, right? Of course, there we can measure objectively and see how long somebody took for a task, if they actually had a mistake during the flow. And so it's basically what we used to call usability, right? A couple of years ago. And the hedonic part is tricky to measure and also to model. And that's also what we do when we do all of our tests in the different life cycles of your products, we always try to keep these different aspects of user experience in mind. And especially when we go into the quantitative UX, it's where it's interesting. The automotive industry, that's difficult because most of the technology is still so secret. But we do like to do online research, so we can actually get hundreds of people into our research and do statistical analysis as well. We do that with universities together, of course, also with our clients, and then we use these more complex models, right, like the technology acceptance model, and break it up for our needs, so we can actually put our data into the right relations. And what we're interested in the end is always the actual use. Like, will somebody actually recommend this product, buy this product, or is willing to use it, right? And when we think about explicit and implicit and actually the behavior, that's where our methods come in, right? So we do have methods that focus on each of these different aspects. And of course, one very important part for us is the perception and attention. We'll come to that in a second. And also when we think about people and their needs when interacting with technology, we like to keep up with the latest literature and our fellow researchers. Now, this is from Mr. Hassenzahl. And basically, we do try to understand the needs of our fellow customers and users. And there's, in his research, he found out there's these basic needs that you have heard of before, but maybe it's worth to actually think of them again. Of course, security I don't need to say much about. Everybody would come up with that in an interview or in an explicit, let's say, interview. And the other one's a little bit more tricky because us as humans, we don't really reflect on our needs and all of our motivations. So stimulation is one that's quite interesting that in an explicit interview maybe wouldn't come up, but with our implicit methods, it's easier to find these. So basically, people like to be stimulated, and of course also by technology. And so that's a need that some of the user segments have, not all of them, of course. And so we do help our clients to understand the different customer segments better, and also to understand what is the need of this customer group. Especially competence is very important from a psychological perspective, because drivers, customers, users, we do all have the need to feel competent. When interacting with technology, if I get the feeling I'm doing something wrong or I don't get it, I feel stupid and I have problems allocating this psychologically. So is it me who is dumb, or is it the system not helping me correctly? So feeling competent is of utmost importance for users and for customers to actually feel like they're in control, but also feel like they're feeling good, right? Relatedness is a very important need, being in a social connection, which when you're driving by yourself isn't that easy, but you all know what you do when you're in the car. You do talk to other people, right? You actually value the time that you can have time to have your hands free. You speak with other people. The relatedness of a social experience is very important for our users, that we find in the qualitative and in the quantitative data. And for a lot of us, the popularity aspect is so important, especially when it comes to new technology, actually showing off and telling people of the new head-up display or the new electric car that you drove, and why you are maybe a WeShare user or you like to drive the new Daimlers. The popularity aspect is much more important than everybody would think, and that, of course, people would normally tell us, right? People like to show off in a way. And yeah, the meaning, the deeper meaning, being actually connected ecologically and globally and thinking about deeper meanings is also something that we hear our customers speak more and more about. And when we do research and design products with our clients, we do always take a step back and say, okay, what are the needs? What are we looking at? And that's something I wanted to bring here with you, as well as some of the very automatic processes that we all know when we process information, or we get to know a new person, and that's basically an inference and something similar to a heuristic. So an inference is when I do a very quick thought or a very quick judgment without going through all the rationals and pro and cons. So when you meet a new person, you do that all the time, right? So you decide, somehow I like this person, I don't know why. And we do the same with technology. And we just picked this little bit older picture of the MBUX here. And so what's your first impression? Do you think you like it? Do you think it will work fine? Of course, from the UX perspective, it's a stupid question. You wouldn't ask it. But it has a very, very high influence. Actually, your first impression of a system. And in this research, Hassan Sal actually found out that the beauty question, so how beautiful do you think this is, will affect all of your further judgments. All of them, meaning the pragmatic and the hedonic aspects of the UX. And so actually designing something, making something pretty, isn't only good because it sells, but it will affect the user experience. And in this research, he found, like in the structural equation modeling, I guess with like smart PLS, he found that the beauty has a direct aspect. And in 2 groups, he did this control session. He said, okay, a couple of people, of course, one group is allowed to interact with the system, the other group not. And he did it scientifically well. And even when interacting with the system later on, the effect of the first judgment still persists. And so for us, it means, okay, let's really focus on this first impression as well, right? Not all 20 UX tasks, and also trying to really see the first experience when people come into contact with something. How do we measure that? And it's really difficult from a psychological and from a researcher perspective. Like, we really need to do everything right in these first, let's say, 30 seconds of an interaction, because you cannot recreate that. People, like after the 10th task, of course, they know the system. And that's what we mean about implicit and about perception. We also call it system zero, to actually focus on that a little bit. And the perception or visual attention helps us a lot to really understand these first few seconds. And these are highly automatic processes. The implicit, you all know a little bit better. That's a little bit more where our emotions come in. And the explicit, of course, is the standard rating scale, system usability scale, user experience questionnaire, and all of these. And so when we have the 3 systems and we'll try to set up good research with our clients, we do not always need eye tracking. We do not always need the perception part. Of course, we always need the explicit part, right? That's for sure. We always need to talk to the people and to our customers, but we'll try to do it at the end, of course. And at the first moments, it should be a rather natural experience in the simulator or even in the car. And that kind of brings us to like 1 or 2 games that we always have with us, and we are close to the coffee break now, so I'll do that with you for just a second. So visual attention, I already said, it's very automized, so it's difficult for us to remember where we looked, what we saw, what we did, and also very difficult for us to find mistakes in written text. But here the question is, how many Fs are in this sentence? Now you have all looked at it for a long time, and I would just ask you to count it in your mind, and I'll just do a little faster today and ask you, who of you found, let's say, 3 Fs? And I would just ask you to raise your hand. And of course, the people at home cannot see this now. Who actually found 4 Fs? Okay. There's a couple. Anybody who found 5? Okay. Anybody who found 6? I know, Peter, you have seen this before. So, and when we look at eye tracking, you have all seen eye tracking before, but that's our daily business. It's automized. People don't read the small words, and you cannot see these little OF words. We just skip over them, and it's the same when you learn driving a long time ago. Things do get automated. Our visual brain is totally helping us with so many things. So you do not see that there's actually, in the end, I think it's 6 Fs here, and it's very difficult for us to concentrate on that, and it's also a reason why we shouldn't talk with our customers about visual attention, because they don't remember it, and it's a very difficult question for them. And when we design, of course, these Gestalt principles are also very important, since one of our parts of the occipital, like our visual cortex in the back of our head, is just focused on line and circles, and is very much specialized in that, pretty much like a neural network. And if I ask you to find the letter N in here for you, it's very difficult, of course. And you would have to go through a serial search and say, like, okay, it's somewhere in there. And some of you find it faster than others. We never really found out why some people are so fast finding it. And it's in here, and here our brain doesn't have a good network to differentiate. And of course, if I ask you to find this letter, it's much easier. And all these automatic processes are very interesting for us from a psychological perspective. And if I ask you to find the letter T here, now that's a little bit of a trick question. And Karina, my colleague, she explains this a little bit better. But basically, when you're in a good mood, people actually say, yeah, I see it on the left-hand side. It's the letter T. If you're in a more restricted mood or you're stressed, people statistically say, I'll see the letter T on the right-hand side. So our emotion actually also influences a lot of how we process information. And this broaden and build theory by Fredrickson is also interesting, because we do want to, of course, bring people in a positive mood, right? And also understand how they process information there. But being like researchers and watching people how they drive, like through a city like Berlin, people are a little bit more stressed out, and their cognitive resources are limited. So it's something we should keep in mind. And our market research videos, the ones that are allowed to show here now, this is an older Tesla, which we, of course, also like to drive within our team. You see, like, when we implement our technology into the systems, stuff that we can implement like within a couple of minutes, not bring too many cameras and systems. These are like it's all like basic data stuff we produce. So we see how many fixations we had, interactions, and pupil blinks and head movements. That's all being measured automatically now, so nothing fancy to do. There's not even the need anymore for one of our researchers to be in the car, and these technologies, they get, of course, better and better. We like this a lot. Like this system is from a Berlin partner company from ours, Pupil Labs. It's a great system attached to an Android phone. We'll just send it to you. You can put it on yourself, no calibration needed. And we'll just ask you, please, when you drive to work, just turn it on, and the videos will be uploaded automatically to the secured cloud. And even the algorithm is now ready that will blur out all of the license plates of your fellow drivers around you. So we are also GDPR safe, and all of these things we'll have to take under consideration. And why we like to be in this real situation, like Mr. Niehaus said, like actually asking real people in their own cars maybe, and understanding how they drive, is because we like to have to understand all three factors of visual attention, and also of how people are functioning. And we have top-down factors, basically what I'm conscious about. Then we have the bottom-up factors, which is more emotional and something evolution kind of gave us. And we have the exposure situation. And when we do research and we kind of forget about the situation, the level of control, is it natural or is it very much standardized research, like in a university context? There we have to speak about how valid is our data. Are we like more on the ecological validity side, or more on the, let's call it more university close research, where everything is very fixed? And so in our research, we like to be in these natural situations, if possible. Of course, that's not always possible, but when we have the chance, we like to do it. And of course, in our case studies, I'll leave you here with the case studies just just a little bit. You can download these or pick them up later on over there. It's very important to understand how this works. Voice, we already heard how important voice is. The quantitative modeling actually of user data for us is very interesting, and I'll skip through these because the time is a little bit short. When we also talk about implicit research, we like to do these reaction time measurements where we show our customers words that they should just react to, yes, fits to the product, doesn't fit to the product for me, so it's more of a gut feeling instead of a very rational, explicit feeling. And when it comes to data modeling, like you see here on the right-hand side, the quantitative data, our experts in the team, they like to do this, right? They like to understand the drivers for people, what is a driver, and put them in these important performance matrices and say, yes, actually, safety is important. This is a study for an HUD, but also what's important is relative advantage and social norms, like we said before, actually being able to talk about it with my friends, telling them I have a new car, I have a new head-up display. And these things we can also prove statistically without just thinking about qualitative data. Now, this is data of 300 people who interacted virtually with a head-up display, and in our results, we can then actually calculate the importance from a statistical perspective, which is something we also like to do very much. And since like to kind of bring the question in at the end, if we are drivers or users, I thought it's a good thing to also think about and maybe to give you as a hint for the next few hours or these 2 days. Of course, when we are in these modern cars, I have the feeling I'm a little bit more of a user now already than a driver, and I like interacting with technology, of course, but that's also why we don't invite our fellow researchers to our studies. But I did stumble upon this feed from John Bowie. He's a researcher in the US, and he said actually no one wants to use your product, right? And he said people don't want to be your users. They want to own a car and they want to drive the car. They like the brand, but actually when people come into the contact and they want to, they're hindered in a way almost. They have to interact with the system, like he says here, with a watch or with all kinds of technical devices. And you all know this feeling when you can't solve a problem. Then they have to become a user because they will try to find the right button, the right information. And so he says they only become users when technology forces them to stop focusing on what they really want. So the art of designing something, and that's something we really respect from our research perspective, of designing a fluid interaction, a great HMI, like Peter said, it's an art, it's very difficult, and when we do our research, like now here the example is actually the ID3 from VW, because we can all drive it now, and also our fellow panelists can drive, and we invite them, so please bring your WeShare car and we'll do some research with you. And in this case, we made sure they have never seen the ID3 before and just did internal research, let them drive. You see the markers here because it's a study where we want to understand if our system works self-administered, so no need for an operator or a researcher to drive with me. So we're actually connected to this person via audio, and they can do their own research, and with this eye tracking system, this now works for the first time. We're actually able to do research by sending this to your home to be part of a real driving situation. And this is kind of what it looks like. It's connected to a phone. The phone is, of course, connected to us, and you don't really need these markers. They're just for us also to understand how often the phone maybe came up to view. And yeah, this is basically what the people say, and we'll just ask them pragmatic and hedonic UEQS. It's a 4 or 7 question questionnaire, so it goes by very fast, and they all do that on the phone. So actually, for us, it's also very important to understand how well this technology integrates into this whole process of research, and that's basically also what I'll leave you with here today, and hope to learn a lot more from all of the fellow speakers. And then, Peter, I think I'll hand it over to you again, and we'll be ready to go to the coffee break.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this very impressive insight into your methods and rules. And when I see this, I have to remember my very first car and driver study that I ever did in my life. That was 1987. And I was measuring eye movements of learner drivers. And I had to put an astronaut's helmet on top of their head. And I had equipment of about that size, 50 kilo weights, that I had to press into the back of the car. I had to squeeze myself beside that. And so there was the driving teacher and the learner driver. And then I had all this raw data, and I think we made enormous progress, and we can focus really on the benefits of the results that we get out of this.
Yeah, now the algorithms will allow to automatically detect the screens and allocate the attention of 10 or 100 drivers, and so with the right research questions, these things help very much. If you don't have a good research question or hypothesis, maybe it's better to just leave them out, of course.
Okay, excellent. Any questions from the audience? Dietrich Mannstetten.
Dietrich Mannstetten, Bosch. So, Philip, thanks for a wonderful presentation. So, the question is maybe somewhat philosophical. So, before the coffee break, when seeing the company name and the logo, so I have the association, at least, of the user being the circle and the research being the square there, and in mathematics, the square is always an approximation for the circle. So is there, or do you see the chance for creating upper and lower bounds with this research and knowing that the truth is in between?
It's a difficult question, but thank you very much. And also, our designer would be very happy about the association for the logo, and then you're actually totally right. Like the circle is actually connected more to the human, and of course also to the perception, and the square about the let's call it science, and actually finding the truth. For us, we wouldn't, as researchers, claim that we're able to do that. We can only approximate the truth or negate our null hypothesis, and no, it's very difficult. But we do think a lot about these aspects of validity. Like, is it actually something that has something where we can say something about the real population, or we're just speaking about doing research with internal respondents? Like, I know all of the OEMs do, right? So like as psychologists, we do most of our research also with fellow psychology students, but what does it have to say about the real world? And it's a very important question about research itself. I'm not sure if I answered the question well, but maybe you can.
I think that answers it perfectly.
Okay.
All right, anything else? Any other questions?
Well, thank you.
Then let's thank Philip with another round of applause.
Thank you, Peter.